Namaskar. Today we will be continuing with our fourth module, and in this particular lecture we shall be speaking about the diversity of personal selling situations. This is a part of module 4. We have already completed the first topic in module 4, which is buyer seller dyad, and we shall now be moving to this second topic in this fourth module, where we will be speaking about the different kinds of personal selling situations, and the different topics that we will be covering in this particular lecture are: we will be speaking about diversity in personal selling situations, we will be talking about categorization of various sales positions and understanding various sales positions. So let us first start with the diversity in personal selling situations. Now, before we move into discussing the different kinds of selling situations, let us first have a quick recap of what personal selling is and what can be how personal selling can differ across service selling and developmental selling. Now, personal selling is a face-to-face interaction between sellers and prospects, which involves informing and persuading the prospects to enter into a transaction. What we are talking of is closing of a sale. So, we have discussed in previous lectures that a personal selling is something which is extremely crucial and involves informing consumers, educating them, persuading them and encouraging them into a purchase. So, personal selling is a face-to-face interaction between the buyer and the seller, and it involves informing them, persuading them to actually enter into a transaction or closing of a sale. Now, salesmanship is an important aspect of personal selling. As we have seen earlier, salesmanship is a skill, it is an art, and selling has been defined as the art of closing a deal. It is a transaction between prospective buyers or prospective buyer and the salespeople or the salesperson. So, when we talk about a selling situation, we will see that there could be different kinds of selling situations, and because selling is an art of closing a deal, the selling style, the selling strategy has to differ across different kinds of selling situations. Of course, irrespective of the different kinds of selling situations, what is important is salesmanship, which is both a skill and an art, and must be used by the salespeople to to enter into exchange process or to encourage buyers, whether existing or potential buyers, to enter into a exchange. Now, significant diversity exists amongst personal selling situations. We have discussed in the previous session something about developmental selling and service selling. A quick recap on that: when salespersons are made to sell to new customers so that they can increase their market share and profits for a company, and where it involves them to convert or to transform prospects into customers, it is known as developmental selling. On the other hand, when salespeople sell more to existing customers, thereby increasing revenues for the company, profits of the company, market share for the company, it is called service selling. In the case of service selling, the customer or the client in the case of B2B, the customer or the client in the case of B2C or B2B respectively is known to the salesperson. So, his needs, wants, habits, preferences are already known to the salesperson, and so service selling is typically a little easier than developmental selling. Now, in spite of the best of efforts on the part of a company to satisfy customers, to create a loyal base of the customers, 5% of the customers will leave you every year. They will leave the seller every year. They will switch over to competitors, and so it's very important that in order to maintain market share, in order to increase market share, salespeople must actually earn new customers or sell to prospects or to potentials, or to sell to customers who are buyers of the competitors' products. So, developmental selling becomes very, very important, although developmental selling is much more difficult than service selling. So, while service selling involves selling your products and services to existing customers whose needs, wants, preferences, buying habits, etc. are already known to the salesperson, and so it is easier to handle. Developmental selling involves selling to new customers, new clients who may be absolutely new to the product, who have no idea about the product category, or who may be buying the competitors' products, so are already into a habit of buying the competitors' products. So the salesperson's job here becomes to break this habit. And so what we see is that developmental selling is much more difficult as compared to service selling. Service selling is when you are selling to existing customers, so it is easier, much easier to handle as compared to developmental selling, where you are either selling to absolutely new customers who have never bought your product, or you are selling to the competitors' customers whose buying habit and patronage to the competitor has to be broken, which means that it is more of a challenge, it is more difficult to handle developmental selling. What I must emphasize upon here is that service selling is easy, but despite customer loyalty, customer satisfaction, there will always be customer defection every year who will move on to buy or switch over to competitive products. And in order to ensure that your market share is retained, in order to ensure that you can increase your market share, salespersons must enter into new businesses, they must sell to new clients, new customers, and so developmental selling becomes important. Although it is challenging, it is something which is very, very, very important, and salespersons in no way can ignore developmental selling. So companies must have a sales force clearly demarcated for developmental selling. In fact, in most companies, the best salespersons are deputed for this particular job, where their task is to earn new customers and earn new business for the organization, broadly referred to as business development managers or business development sales team, whose job is to actually earn new customers, or who are entrusted with the responsibility of developmental selling. Of course, this does not mean that service selling can be undermined. Service selling is also important, because you need to maintain your existing customer base, you need to keep them happy, you need to keep them satisfied and loyal, and service selling of course involves much lesser effort than developmental selling, and so selling to existing customers is also very, very important. Now, if we talk of sales positions, there could be three different kinds of sales positions. We could classify salespeople or salespersons as order takers, order creators, or order getters. Now, order takers are those who take orders, as the term goes, and they respond to already committed customers, both within a store or outside. If people enter a particular store and are taken care of by the retail salesperson, the retail salesperson acts as an inside order taker. So he is going to sell to somebody who enters the store. There could also be a situation where the salesperson caters to a already committed customer base by merely acting as a delivery salesperson for maybe the morning newspaper wala, or the milkman who comes and delivers milk to you at your doorstep. So he is a delivery salesperson. He is also an order taker. Of course, the orders have already been taken. He already has a committed customer base who have agreed to buy newspapers from him or to buy milk from him, and so he goes and acts as a delivery boy, and so this is how the order taker will act outside. So we have those which are inside and cater to customers who enter the store, or they are also order takers who cater to customers outside, even at their doorstep, as delivery salesperson. There could be also outside order takers who invite customers to enter their store and buy things from them, or for example, you have a lot of in certain areas where there are a lot of eating joints or dhabas, people there is a team which actually invites people inside with better deals or with better offers, so that the customers can be lured to enter the particular dhaba and have food. The second type of sales position is what we refer to as an order creator. Now, what is an order creator? They create orders. They do not receive orders, they do not take orders, but they only talk to those people who would recommend the product or the service or the brand to the end customers. So, we will talk about the order creators a little later in their length. For example, the medical representatives or the faculty who are contacted by the salesperson from pharmaceutical companies or from publishers respectively, and they further recommend prescribe medicines or recommend those books to the patients and to the students respectively. So, these are referred to as the missionary salespersons, and why they are called missionary salesperson is because their task is to educate people who would further recommend or prescribe or suggest the product or the brand to the end consumer or the end customer. There is another category which we have, which is referred to as the order getters, and the order getters are those who generally take care of technically complex products or high involvement products. Especially in the case of a B2B scenario, they convince customers to place a direct order. Okay, so they convince customers to place direct orders. We have people like frontline salespersons or the sales support staff who actually constitute what we refer to as order getters. Now, if we go beyond and we categorize the sales positions, we will see that the various sales positions exhibit diversity across various kinds of service and developmental selling. And McMurray and Arnold have categorized the sales positions into 3 mutually exclusive groups, which can be further categorized into subgroups. So, let us talk about this categorization where we have group A, which is service selling, we have group B, which is developmental selling, and we have group C, which is developmental selling but requiring unusual creativity. So, let us discuss each of these now and in greater detail. So, let us first start with the group A, which is service selling. Now, group A involves different kinds of sales positions. One, the inside order taker. As said earlier, the inside order taker serves customers in a shop. For example, the salesperson on the sales counter in a retail store. Whether the retail store is an organized format or an unorganized format, in both the cases, it is the customer who is entering the store. He has a need and a want. He arrives at the store. He chooses the product or the brand from the wide assortment which is available in the store. There is a salesperson there who assists the customer if required, okay, and helps him complete the transaction. And salesperson may also be involved in making bills and collecting payments in exchange for the goods, especially in the case of the unorganized format or the small retail stores. Of course, in larger formats, there is a separate billing counter and a separate staff which deals with the bills and the accounts. But in smaller stores, it is the retail salesperson who does everything, not only showing the products around or helping the customer in the purchase decision, but also billing, taking money, delivering the product to him. So, this is what an inside order taker is. They serve on customers who enter a shop, whether this is for example, the sales assistant in the retail store, whether the retail store is an organized one or an unorganized one. When a customer enters, the retail salesperson acts as an inside order taker. Now, in some cases, the retail salesperson has a big role and acts as an important determinant in whether the purchase will happen or not. This is especially in the case of high involvement products. We refer to high involvement products as those products which are expensive, infrequently bought, level of perceived risk is high. For example, and action is irrevocable, which means that once you purchase them, you cannot return them. Such cases are for products like durables or consumer durables or consumer semi-durables. In those cases, you will see that the salesperson, even if he is an inside order taker, has a bigger role to play. On the other hand, in large formats or in large organized retail formats, you also have sales staff dealing with just showing the customer around or helping him in case the customer asks about where a product is or where he should locate a particular product or a brand. So here the role of the salesperson is not very significant. He merely acts as an facilitator, as a helper, and so his role as an inside order taker is not as significant as it could be in the case of products for consumer durables. On the other hand, in the case of smaller stores on unorganized formats, there of course the salesperson assumes a big role, because he is taking orders, he is billing, he is collecting cash, and so he performs a large number of functions or duties, and he has number of tasks to perform. All of these are what we refer to as inside order takers. Second is what we refer to as delivery salespersons. Now, delivery salespersons are again order takers, as we mentioned in the previous slide. They deliver products to the customers, be it B2B or be it B2C, which is whether they are business customers or whether they are end consumers or households. For example, the salesperson delivering milk and bread to retail stores in the case of a B2B, where the retailer is further going to then sell it to the end consumer. So the retailer here acts as a customer for the delivery salesperson, who is who represents the local bakery from where he collects the bread and the biscuits, and then he comes and delivers it to the retail store. So he acts as a delivery salesperson in the B2B scenario, where he delivers bread and biscuits from the local manufacturer to the retail store, and the retail store would then sell it on through his counter. Salespersons delivering eggs, milk, bread and other bakery products, or even newspapers to household, again constitute what we refer to as delivery salespersons in the B2C scenario. So in the B2B scenario, their role is typically to help the channel partners, but in the case of B2C scenario, the delivery salespersons deliver the product, whether it is newspapers or eggs or milk or bread or other bakery products, to the end customer or to the household. So they are merely involved in delivering the goods to existing customers. Now, whether the orders are increased and business is retained or lost from the customers depends a lot upon the reliability of the delivery salesperson. It depends upon his punctuality, it depends upon his reliability in terms of meeting the quantity and the quality of the product. And so the delivery salesperson caters to a committed customer base, but whether this commitment would continue or not depends a lot on the efforts of the salesperson and on the performance of the delivery salesperson. The third is a route or merchandising salespeople. Now, they operate as order takers but generally work in the field. For example, the local soap and detergent salesperson who visits retailers and supplies such products, or the local bakery salesperson who supplies to the retailers variety of biscuits and bread. So, in the previous slide we mentioned about the delivery salesperson in a B2B scenario. The delivery salesperson in a B2B scenario would also constitute as a route or merchandising salesperson. On the other hand, in cases like there is a local factory which produces soap and detergent, so there would be people from the manufacturer's end who come and who inform and educate the retail store owner about the soap and the detergent, and then will take orders from them and keep delivering them with the necessary quantity, is an example of the route or merchandising salesperson. So he would actually visit the retailer and supply them with such products. Okay. The fourth is what we refer to as missionary salespersons. Now, missionary salespersons are order creators. We referred to the order creators where we said that their role is more to educate or to inform those people who would further suggest or prescribe or recommend the product or the brand to the end user and the buyers. So, missionary salespeople, because their role is to educate and inform, because they play a bigger role in educating those who would further suggest or recommend this to the end customer, these people are referred to as missionary salespersons. They are missionary salespersons because their prime role is to educate. They are salespersons who will educate the prospective buyers or the potential users about products and services and about their brand. They will also aim at building goodwill for the company, strong reputation for the company and for their brand. They are not supposed to take orders in any way, but they are only supposed to influence the purchase decision of the prospects via another person, and this another person is the person whom they are actually targeting at. So, for example, you have medical representatives from pharmaceutical companies. They do not make direct sales, they only provide information to the doctors about the medicines, about the drugs. They provide samples to them, and then doctors then prescribe the medicines to the patients who are actual buyers and users of those medicines. Similarly, salespeople from publishing houses, they visit faculty in colleges and in universities and inform them about their textbooks, reference books, etc. They provide free copies also to the faculty, and the faculty then prescribe these books to students who are actual buyers and end users. So, because the role of the medical representative or the MR, or because the book salespersons from the publisher's end, because their role is to educate the doctors or the teachers respectively, they are referred to as missionary salespersons. They are order creators. Then we have technical salespersons who are not only order. They constitute what we refer to as the order getters. They could also be order creators, but majorly they would be order getters. Now, they are salespersons who actually possess a lot of technical knowledge as well as the selling skills. They are very technically very sound, and they can deal with technically complex products. So, they deal with the clients during pre-purchase, during purchase and post-purchase. Often they enter into what we refer to as consultative and problem solving selling. We will be talking about consultative and problem selling styles in subsequent lectures. Now, the technical salespersons, they offer sale advice, they provide answers to technical queries on a range of products and services. They also involved in providing demos. They handle customer queries if any. They also handle the delivery and installation and take care of after sales. So, they act as an interface between the client and the company, and they are the main point of contact for the client. For example, technical salespeople involved in selling machinery to a manufacturing unit. They would estimate the cost of installing the machinery or annual maintenance. They will arrange for the installation. They will also make provisions for annual maintenance. So, anything and everything related, right from procurement to installation to maintenance, will be taken care by these technical salespeople, and so they will be providing a huge amount of service to the clients, both pre, during and post purchase. So, we refer to them as technical salespersons. Now, the second group which we have is what we refer to as developmental selling. Now, in the case of developmental selling, we have what we refer to as the creative salespersons of tangibles, the creative salespersons of intangibles, and we will first talk about the salespersons of tangibles, and then we will speak about the creative salespersons of intangibles. Now, creative salesperson of tangibles are people who sell products and services which have lesser product differentiation from competitors, and they very often deal with products or services which don't have any special advantages as compared to competitive offerings. So, salespersons are required to make sales to new customers by being creative in their selling strategy, and through good sales presentation and through good impressive sales presentation, through good interpersonal skills, they are supposed to convert the prospects into actuals. They also sell to existing customers, but are majorly entrusted with the responsibility to sell to prospects and to new clients, and they are order getters for the company. They handle selling situations which are much more complex and critical than those which are handled by the order takers, and for example, people who sell automobiles or who sell expensive machinery. So, these are products which are dealt with by salespersons who we refer to as the creative salespersons of tangibles. Now, we also have something called the creative salespersons of intangibles. They are like creative salesperson of tangible, but they sell services. We all know services are intangible. They are an act of performance from one party to another, and the characteristics of services require a very different selling approach. Services are intangible in nature, they are inseparable from production and consumption, they cannot be stored, they are perishable, and production and consumption happen simultaneously. So, this makes the job of the salesperson very challenging, and there are salespersons who sell services which have lesser service differentiation than the competitors. So, for example, insurance policies, financial investments, encyclopedias, etc. Now, here it involves a huge amount of creativity on the part of the salesperson to convince prospects into entering into a an exchange or sale. So, of course, the buyers receive intangible benefits which are very difficult to measure and evaluate, and this makes the job of the salesperson even more challenging. Okay. Then we come to group C, which is basically developmental selling but requiring unusual creativity. Now, in this case again we have the political, indirect or backdoor salespersons, and then we have salesperson engaged in multiple sales. Now, the first, which is political, indirect or backdoor salesperson, these are salespersons who sell very expensive product, and again with not much of competitive differentiation. Sales are earned by providing highly customized services to key decision makers in the buying center. Now, what is a buying center? The buying center constitutes the decision making unit with respect to purchase decisions. In common day-to-day language, we refer to it as a purchase committee, but the word here is the buying center. Especially in the case of a B2B scenario, the buying centers comprise people from different departments, from different levels, and all of them have important say in whether a purchase would be made or would not be made, and who would the order go to, whether it would go to vendor A or vendor B or so forth. So, the salespersons here, the political, indirect or backdoor salespersons, have a big challenge that they must sell products which are expensive. They must also sell products which do not have much of competitive features and advantages, and but it will require a huge amount of effort on their part to be able to convince members in the buying center. So, sales are earned by them by offering highly customized solutions to the key decision makers. I'm also making highly customized services to key decision makers or to the main deciders in the buying center. Then finally, we have salespersons engaged in making multiple sales. Now, salespersons, again, these are people who sell expensive products, often capital goods, capital items which are highly priced and with long-term implications for the clients. So, the purchase decision requires a huge amount of thought and deliberation on the part of the customer and his organization in the case of a B2B. So, the salesperson must make a good presentation, be very impressive. He must have the technical know-how. He must also have the negotiation skills, and he must be able to convince people in different departments in different levels, and so which would mean that he would have to go in for multiple sales calls for multiple products. So, a salesperson of an equipment or maintenance services making presentations to people in different departments will constitute a part of who constitute a part of the purchase decision is an example of a salesperson engaged in multiple sales. He will be involved in equipment, maintenance of different products, related products for a particular client, and he'll have to make multiple sales calls to be able to finally convince the different people in the buying center. Now, if we understand the various sales positions, we would see here that assured business comes to order takers. Order creators cannot always be assured of sales to happen till they actually take place, and order getters need to make multiple sales calls before they can convert prospects to actual customers. Second, developmental selling is challenging when it comes to generating sales, and especially when combined with the need to be creative, it is even more difficult. So, it would require multiple sales call on the part of the salesperson. and the easiest form of sales which is self-service on the part of the customer. So if we see across all the different sales position, there is huge amount of diversity required with respect to personal selling. So the different sales position require diversity in personal selling styles and personal selling strategies. So with this we come to an end of this particular lecture. The references are still Kandev, Govoni, Puri, Sales and Distribution Management, 6th edition 2017 Pearson, Havaldar and Kavale, Sales and Distribution Management, 3rd edition 2017 McGraw-Hill, Panda and Sehdev, Sales and Distribution Management, 2nd edition Oxford University Press, and Futrell, Fundamentals of Selling, 13th edition McGraw-Hill. This brings us to an end of the second lecture on the 4th module of the course. I hope you found this particular lecture useful. Thank you.